quiet. Everybody's being so respectful today.
Julie, they must have their own.
Be a rebel, you want me to be a rebel?
Says
We
Thomas
have
Earl
like
Jensen.
we have like a minute now. No, we have a minute now, Gail. You better
All I'm telling you is that.
better calm it down.
It says warrior.
Is that the right one?
Better tone it down, Gail, so.
Gary Jensen.
Yes.
There you go.
Well, there's Thomas Casey.
Yeah. Is that the right email for you?
It is, but all I'm telling you is that I don't have it.
Okay, well, you must have deleted it.
Just because somebody sent something doesn't mean somebody received something.
That's true.
It is 5:30, so let's get our meeting called to order. It is November 2nd. Can you believe it's November already? I was looking at the calendar just going, what happened to the rest of the year? So here we are, November 2nd. Our opening ceremony tonight will be by Councilman Ernesto. Yes, Ernesto, thank you. When you're done, Ernesto, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance also?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. It's November 2021. The holiday season in our country is well underway. As I reflect on the past 12 months, I realize that I have many reasons to be thankful. Thankful as in overflowing with gratitude for the blessings we enjoy in our daily lives. From opportunities to liberties, you would probably agree with all or most of them. They are plentiful and reach every corner of our existence. One that recently struck me was seeing children playing outside in our streets and sidewalks. At first glance, they were just children having fun, enjoying their bikes and scooters. But as the days went by and I kept seeing them enjoy their childhood, I realized that many children around the world do not have the same privilege. To many parts of the world, safety is a luxury they can't afford. To us, the citizens of Logan, feeling safe comes very naturally, maybe even as natural as breathing. Many others elsewhere do not know such a feeling. Parents would never allow their children play by themselves for fears of their children dying or disappearing altogether. Not long ago, Logan was ranked one of the safest areas in our nation, and I feel fortunate to enjoy living here with my family, walking our streets without worrying about an impending wrong happening to us. After our early winter storm a few weeks ago, I was reminded once more about our many blessings. I witnessed crews work diligently to clean up fallen tree branches and reconnect lost power. I kept thinking, how many weeks would such an effort take in my beloved Mexico after such an event? 1, 2, 3 weeks, 1 month, 2 months? I understand there were overwhelming numbers of downed power lines across our valley, yet I saw how our city crews worked long hours making sure people had power in their homes. They also quickly mobilized to set up debris drop-off locations for people to bring their downed tree branches. I saw our city landfill open its doors to an entire valley to come and dispose of their tree branches with no questions asked. Many of us saw firsthand the mountain of green waste this became after a week or so of the incident. What a blessing to see our city do even more than expected for its citizens and beyond. Taking part in our community traditions and culture and expanding them to new horizons has also been a blessing. How fortunate are we that we get to enjoy parades and festivals on our streets, that our families can enjoy the diversity of our people, that we can come together to help those in need, that we can set our differences aside and offer a helping hand to your neighbor, that we can dedicate days or even months to a variety of worthy causes and celebrations. May we continue to learn more about each other and discover that we have much more in common than we think. When I joined the Logan City Council a year ago, I didn't know what to expect. This wonderful opportunity has given me a new outlook on my daily life and the things that occupy my mind. I have learned much I didn't know about our city, its people and government, and I have a new appreciation for everything that makes Logan the place it is. We know it's not perfect. We know that we can find ways to do better. I can do better. You as well. I am thankful for this experience and the opportunity to serve our community. Thankful for the welcoming support you have provided to a newcomer like me, with strengths and weaknesses and a genuine desire to serve. May God continue to bless each one of us with love and wisdom. May He bless our city and valley, our state and nation. And may we be thankful every day of our lives. You can join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Vanessa.
Absolutely. It was nice.
Very good to start our meeting off. All right, I am open for a motion to accept the minutes and approve the agenda.
I will move acceptance of the minutes and approval of the agenda for this evening.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded for acceptance of the minutes and approval of the agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? They've been accepted. Our regular meeting schedule are the first and third Tuesdays of each month at 5:30, and our next meeting is November 16th, and that's coming up in 2 weeks. At this point, if you have any questions or comments for the mayor or for the council that you'd like to share, please try and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Please state your name and where you live, and that's an opportunity to speak to us about anything that is not currently on the agenda for tonight.
They're Russian.
So obligated. You don't have to, John.
No, I want to. I was actually inspired by Ernesto and John Chivek, Logan. That was nice. But I would, because a lot of times I would come up and I complain and whatever. But Mayor, I just wanted to thank you. That I waited for a while before I brought all my branches and stuff over there. You could have seen that pile from space easily. So that was nice to be able to get. It was efficient, got in, and I don't know how that's going, but the city, everybody just did a great job. So I just want to thank you for that. So thanks.
It was a mountain of debris. So everyone in the city, not just the city workers, have done a great job to help out each other, help out their neighbors, take care of things. Thank you, Mayor and staff. I already told Paul, you guys are awesome. So thank you so much. All right. If there's no other comments, Mayor, staff reports, please.
Great. I will just give a brief report on a new rec program that the Parks and Rec Department has put together. As you know, during the winter months when kids can't be outside anymore, we like to have activities, and typically we've had team sports like junior jazz and more organized games. But they have a new program that will begin. Let's see, when will it begin? Registration is going on now. It begins November 30th on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6 p.m. It's for 5th to 8th graders, so it's designed for that age group. Very reasonable price, and each week they focus on a new sport or activity. So, for instance, week 1 is cornhole and can jam. Week 2 is soccer, tennis, and pickleball. Week 3 is spike ball and cross net. And week 4 is volleyball and dodgeball. Again, so it's just kind of a fun option as part of our rec program, something a little different that people can enjoy if they don't want to do a team sport. So look at the flyer online. You can scan this to register, and if you have children in that age group, they may be very interested. And that is everything I have this evening.
Good. Thank you, Mayor. Tom, you said you had a comment about the League of Cities and Towns conference that you went to.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was out of town for the last meeting. I know nobody noticed that, but
Everybody
We
knows.
missed you, Joe. Yes, we missed you.
swimming
Just
with
didn't
you.
know about it.
I did notify.
I will take responsibility for not telling everybody that Tom mentioned it to me.
I was swimming with alligators and manatees, and that was fun. And I understand that Amy gave a very nice report on our visit with, well, it was a conference with the Utah League of Cities and Towns. I was most impressed with the discussions on housing. And it's, as I made a brief note, it's not just single family or multifamily. It seems like that's what we've dealt with. It's either single family or multifamily. And there's a lot of other varieties. I mean, they may be close to multifamily, but the point is we need to fill in that gap between just the single family and what we see as the 4-story or so. And so that's the first thought. The second is that, from what we gather from the economics, is that the problem is growing. It's not going away. And we can't build we are not building our way out of the problem right now. It's getting increasingly more difficult because of the cost of construction and because of family creation. So the third point I want to make is that I think there needs to be creative approaches, not just a single family. We need to not be just reactive, but perhaps proactive. I think that a proactive approach will enrich our neighborhoods and will have a better city. Because as people go through their stages of life, there's other things than, as I said, the single family where you might have your 2 or 3 or 5 kids, and then the multifamily where it's just a couple. So that's my input on there, and I think Amy had a report, and I think the mayor, did you respond to our report also? You tell me. Okay. Thank you for letting me say that.
But I don't know if I told the council members, I was appointed to serve on the League of Cities and Towns Board.
Great.
So I will be representing Northern Utah, depending on the outcome of tonight.
Thanks, Tom, for that update. Vice Chair Simmons, do you have a report for us from the Planning Commission?
Yes, they had one item on their agenda. One item was continued again. And the item that they discussed last night and ended up continuing as well is the Cache County Food Pantry will be doing a 9240 square foot building to the west of their existing building. And they will take down one house on 400 South and put in a wider driveway behind the church. And there were some concerns about parking for the church and making sure that adequate landscaping and parking was part of the project, so they will be talking about it again in 2 weeks.
Okay.
In addition to a few other things, which might be really interesting, like Italian ice.
Giving us some
Is that
foreshadowing.
Italian ice? Isn't it Italian ice?
Yeah, Zeppi's.
Giuseppe's? So, anyway.
Zeppi's.
Zeppi's.
Used to be in Providence.
Yes, they were in Providence.
Yeah.
So, anyway, there's exciting things coming, Italian ice. It'll be fun.
Any questions for Jeannie? Thank you for that report, Jeannie.
No worries.
All right, let's move into our action items. We have continued from last time we met, the 19th of October, ordinance 21-22. We gave some assignments out. Are you here to report on your assignments, Mike?
Yes, I think I am.
Please.
Okay, I emailed you out a little late earlier this afternoon, part of a memo that didn't get put in the packet. There were some technical glitches with some of the equipment, I guess, so it didn't make it. I won't go through the background if you don't want me to, but the assignment was to go out and look for some science on animals. And let me get to it. So basically, out of the last meeting, you agreed to prohibit slaughtering all the sections for all different animals, residential areas. You increase the number of chickens, and here's the ranges, 5 to 6, 6 to 12, 8 to 15, 20 to 10 to 20, 15 to 25. And then you wanted me to reach out to the USU Extension and find science on numbers of animals per lot. So in doing that, just so everybody's clear, there's really no science on backyard animals. There's not a specific number that's appropriate. It's all, here's how you can do it. Here's the best management practices. But really what it comes back to is it's a policy decision by a local government to either allow them or not allow them in residential areas. And that's really kind of why we're here. But what came out of it is we really need clear, objective, and enforceable standards. It's got to be very clearly defined. And there's a wide range of approaches to permitting multiple species on residential lots. We talked about that. And I'll talk about one in a minute. It's the animal equivalent unit approach. And that's used in North Logan, Hiram, Hyde Park, I think Smithfield. And really that's rooted in the basis of when you look at the carrying capacity of rangeland, how many animals can you put out there without destroying things? And it's pretty easy mathematically to get there. We just have to tailor it to fit kind of a residential area. The other way to do it is as other jurisdictions do, they tell you that you can have 1 of 4 animals on a lot. So you can have chickens, period, or you can do chickens and goats, whatever we define those numbers as. We could also increase some of the operational setbacks to respond to some of the concerns you got. How close do you want an animal pen to your house versus saying no, and then decrease the numbers or increase minimum lot sizes. So there's ways to get at some of the concerns that have been raised. You can also permit or prohibit by zones. This is a land use ordinance, so it's a zoning-based approach. You can also say we won't allow animals in these zones. So just to kind of go through this animal equivalent unit, and this is the draft language I gave you said if you want to just put chickens on your lot, follow the one section on chickens. If you want to do goats, follow that section. But this is really trying to get at if you want to do a multitude of species on a piece of property. And the way this works is you classify animals based on their size. So a large animal, cow, horse, donkey, mule, whatever, anything that's larger than 500 pounds. A medium animal is, as you see up there, an emu, a llama, a pig. Small is 30 to 250 pounds. Then you have the smaller animals like a fowl, rabbits, things like that. And you assign those classifications a numeric standard. So a cow would get 1.0. A medium animal is 0.5, small is 0.2, and a fowl is 0.05. And again, it's related to that range approach where you can put 10 cows on 10 acres because we know they'll do this much damage and they need this much feed. So in looking at what other jurisdictions do, what's an appropriate animal equivalent unit per acre, and in looking at our large livestock proposal, it's basically 2 large livestock per acre. So 2 cows per acre, and that's what I use as my baseline. And then the formula to figure out how many total animals is you take your lot acreage, you times it by 2.0, and then that gives you the number of animals allowed. Okay, so I'll give you some examples. So if you have a 6,000 square foot lot and it's 0.137 acres, you times that by 2, it ends up at 0.33 AEUs permitted for a 6,000 square foot lot. That equates to 1 small animal or 2 birds. Okay, so if you jump down to say a 20,000 square foot lot, 20,000 square feet is 0.459 times 2. That's the 2 animal equivalents per acre. That gives you 0.92 AEUs for a 20,000 square foot lot, and that would equate to some variation of a medium animal, 2 small animals, or 1 medium animal and 1 small animal and 4 fowl. So there's a way to get to it mathematically. And again, this is an approach that other jurisdictions use in the valley. I don't know what's the best approach, but I think they had the same concerns when they brought up their approaches to regulate animals. Let's see, what else? think that was pretty much what you wanted me to report on.
So do you know how they're doing the enforcement in those areas that are using the ADU? Like,
It'll get back to, it's driven by a nuisance ordinance and a complaint that somebody would get. You'd go out and verify the complaint, either, odor, noise, your animals running in my yard, that type of thing. And then you would kind of back from there and say, well, here's what the standards are. Are you meeting these, yes or no? And then how do we fix what the nuisance activities are? So I have to answer any questions.
You weren't here, Tom. Do you have any questions for Mike? Since you were not here last time for the
Well,
full description.
I read all of it, and I guess I'm glad it wasn't, I shouldn't say it. I think Mike and the staff should be commended. He did a lot of work. I know it was a lot of detail. So I was impressed with that. I'm getting two waves of responses. One is a good number of people wrote emails, and now I'm getting phone calls just hating the whole idea. And largely they came from the Hillcrest area. And then I heard from you that in our meeting last time that there was a large outcry of support and desire for this type of thing. So it seems like there's two visions going on amongst the population. So there's something confusing going on.
And it seems like neither like the proposal because they're both saying we don't have enough animals and we don't want any animals.
Yeah, so we just
That's what I'm getting.
bag the whole thing.
I do have a question, Mike. Can you go over the setbacks again so we understand how those setbacks work?
Sure.
Because there's been some questions from emails that said, I don't want chickens right underneath my bedroom window. It's like, well, there are setbacks.
Right. So the proposal that came to you from Planning Commission, it really relates back to how we define agriculture. And what we've tried to distinguish is regular agriculture, which would be kind of a commercial industrial scale, to an urban ag, which is really what we're talking about. How do you provide your own food production on an urban scale? And what we came up with was you've got to have your coop fenced area in the back or side yard. It's got to be a fenced area, fenced location, and 25 feet back from dwellings on adjoining lots. So not 25 feet from the property line, but 25 feet from an adjoining residential structure. And then for bees, it's the same thing, 25 feet from adjoining dwellings on adjoining lots. And then for miniature livestock and regular livestock, it's 50 feet from adjoining dwellings. And that's where, some of the concerns you heard about was I don't want to have animals next door to me. And when you look at portions of Logan that were created back in late 1800s, 1900s, they created that Plaza Zion concept where there were bigger lots, people had animals in the back, compared to like a Hillcrest or Cliffside or other contemporary subdivisions where you don't have that same layout. So then it's an issue of how far can I be from these adjoining residential homes. Really, that's the issue: is the noise, the smell, animals, flies.
So in the Hillcrest area, for example, if you were to put a chicken coop in your backyard, what are the setbacks from the property line where the adjoining house would be? So what you're here and there's a house facing the street on the other side and your backyards connect.
Mm-hmm.
How much setback is there, rear setback is there in those neighborhoods from one house to the other?
Well, the setback that we propose in here is actually measured from the adjoining dwelling and off the property line. So you can put it on your property as long as you meet that 25 feet from the guy behind you. There's a zoning setback of 10 feet. Your structure has to be 10 feet in the rear off that rear property line.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is, if you put your chicken coop on your property line,
Mhm.
are you going to be 25 feet from your neighbor in most cases in Hillcrest?
It just depends. Depends on the layout of the lots, depends on how big they are. So in some cases, yes, in some cases, maybe not.
So if you're not, you can't have them anyway.
If you don't have enough room to meet that standard, then no, you couldn't put a chicken coop on your back property line, if that adjoining house was close enough to the property line.
Or a miniature horse or,
Or a miniature horse or a miniature goat or whatever.
okay.
Or rabbit.
And then
Rabbit.
we have also
Yeah.
heard from at least one and two individuals who are concerned that there are people in the community that raise goats because their children are allergic.
Mhm.
And that is, so how would we handle that sort of scenario?
Well, I don't think it's up to us to validate whether someone's medical condition requires them to have goats on site.
Right, I understand that.
And I think we would apply the same standards to them as we would anybody else. And if they live on a small lot in a residential area and they can't meet the standards, then they couldn't have goats on the property. They would need to provide goat milk from some other source.
What if they already have them?
Then if, depending on the standards you come up with, we'll proceed with enforcement. We have a current enforcement case that involves that scenario. And when you look at the way we apply grandfathering, they're in an area that's zoned NR6 that doesn't allow for animals currently. So technically you can't do it now. And they brought those animals in after, zoning was established there. So they haven't done it lawfully or legally. So we would enforce against them. And part of the issue is we create regulation that really gets down to the lowest common denominator. It's always the one person, the one bad actor who ruins it for everybody else, and that's what we're trying to go after. Most people are responsible. They probably wouldn't have 10 goats on a 6,000 square foot lot, or 10 chickens and 10 ducks, whatever his total number is. You'd be a little more receptive or in tune with your neighbors, what their wishes and needs are. But where you're on a small lot like that, he's probably far exceeded what's a reasonable standard to put animals there.
And have them be healthy and.
Right, and have them be healthy and still maintain, keeping odors down, keeping the waste under control, keeping the noise under control. Because not only do these folks, we want to make them or allow them the right to keep animals, within parameters, but we also have to be in tune with the folks who live next door who may not like the same types of animals. So you may want, 5 pygmy goats, but I may not like pygmy goats. And, is that fair to my property rights to have somebody next door to me when I don't live in the country?
Do any of the cities that maybe you looked at to compare have a permit application process where they have to get approval from their neighbors?
There's one or two that I saw that had that, but we've talked earlier about requiring a permit, and I think we want to avoid that. It's just one more kind of bureaucratic process. We don't want to be in the business of issuing you a permit to have animals on your property. We just want to have the standards in place. Go forth and conquer, or if you can't meet them, then you can't do it.
Well, it seems to me that right now we have quite a few people with chickens in their yard, and we have quite a few people with bees in their yard. We have fewer people who have other livestock. Maybe they have rabbits, but I'm going to put rabbits and chickens in the same bucket. And today they're not permitted, correct, in NR6?
That's correct, not in NR6. They are permitted under our current zoning scheme. Here's a map that shows. So in our land development code, we've got ag defined. It's that very broad definition. And in 2013, we put agriculture as a permitted use in the NR4, NR2, RC zones, industrial, CS, AP. So really, it's these light yellow areas on this map that are currently zoned NR4 that would permit agricultural uses.
And the rest of the city does not allow any of it.
Yeah, generally the rest of the residential areas, no. But again, this purple area out here that's industrial or commercial services, you can do ag. And then further north, the airport area, you can do ag. And that's where you traditionally see some of the, the last dairies that are out there and some wheat fields and things like that.
So interestingly enough, it seems as though we have said it's okay to have them in places where we've heard from the most people who don't want them there.
Well, yeah, and that's
That's what I
That's where
find
they
really
came up.
interesting.
Yeah.
yeah, the irony is that's why we're here is to figure this out. So we've got a uniform system that applies fairly across the board. When you step back and say, wait a sec, I can do it up here in the Hillcrest area where they don't really want it, or so they've expressed that. But again, it's even more fundamental than that. It's when you look at the definition of ag and you live in Hillcrest, you can put in a dairy farm up there, right? You can do that right now under our current system that we have in place. Yet, if you live down in the older part of Adams,
And you live on a great big lot,
you can't have 3 chickens, right?
right?
So that's really the approach. And we've had, we didn't want to. This isn't because we had a lot of time to waste to do this and bring all the angst upon ourselves. It's we just have to resolve the problem because we get people asking us if they can or can't have chickens in their backyard. That's really the primary that we deal with. We don't deal a lot with folks who ask to put in a miniature goat or miniature ponies or a cow or a horse. That's not really what we deal with. It's more of the other stuff. So
I think Jeannie raises an interesting point in that people are saying, don't allow this in areas where it already is allowed. So if
Right.
the ordinance had been passed the way it was presented to us last week, it would have only codified what was extra codified what was already in place.
Right.
So.
And would have expanded the ability for NR6 with, restrictions. So it's an interesting conundrum that you've got. And I know we also have, there are areas of town, especially Deercrest, I'm thinking, which has a lot of NR4, I'm pretty sure. And they are in an HOA, and their HOA prohibits animals of any kind. And HOA sort of is a layer on top of whatever ordinance we might pass, because they are more restrictive and they can do that as an HOA, correct?
right, and the map that was sent to you, I think from Michael Timmons, it showed 50 plus lots up there that are 20,000 square feet in size and larger. Over half of those are in an HOA controlled area, so they don't permit the animals to begin with. So when you scrape those off, the number actually comes down to what would be affected up there. But you can still do things on smaller lots, so he still has the same concern.
Right. And so, but anyway, I'm just saying it's an interesting.
We had the same thing back when it was changed in 2000. And prior to that, the zoning that ag was permitted in was the R1A, R2A, R3A, R4A. And that's where the city was permitting and allowing for the fourplexes and the small multifamily projects to go in. The missing middle housing that Tom alluded to. Yet you could still do that, but you could still do chickens and animals and stuff. So it seemed kind of a weird approach then.
Well, I think that, it needs to be very clear that zoning ordinance are always an evolutionary process. And as the city grows and changes and people's needs grow and change, we try to adapt to those needs without impacting people who would choose not to have any change. So it becomes very difficult because I know there are people who are very passionate about the animals that they already have in areas where they're not allowed. And people who are also very passionate about not having animals in areas where they currently are allowed. and so it's it's difficult to sort through all of it. I feel a little bit like I could do bees and chickens, but I don't know if I can do anything else. And so I don't know how everybody else feels. I've talked enough.
So I have a question on the, so the animal equivalent units is actually much tighter than the numbers of chickens we talked about 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Right.
So it has to be either one or the other.
Yes.
As far as what we did, as far as what we would pass, so even if we did just talk about chickens, we would have to be mindful that if we talked about the AEU, not ADU, the AEU.
I know we've got a lot of those.
That
And no
if
CEUs.
we pass something related to the chicken volumes we discussed 2 weeks ago, we could be in conflict then when we bring up the AEU related to other animals.
Well, it seems to me, I feel like the AEU is something we could discuss and pass as an overarching, that is the standard. You can have this is what you can have based on your square footage. But that doesn't deal with the people who really don't want any of it. And it doesn't deal with the people who want more chickens because the ones aren't laying. So that's very challenging to
The
me.
proposed language that I gave you in the code basically says if you're gonna go down the path of doing just chickens, then follow the other standards. The numbers that you all agreed to last week or last time.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do chickens and
Somebody
cows,
else.
then go this path, and this is more restrictive in terms of like the number of fowl.
I kind of like the AU idea.
Yeah,
But, I mean, I don't vote on it, and I get that. But does it really make sense to have these larger animals in the city? I mean, granted, there are a few grandfathered cases where there are large lots, and that's fine, but, I mean, we're a city. That doesn't make sense to me, so.
A lot of people talk about we are an agricultural community.
But most of the comments seem to have been about the small and medium-sized animals. I have not had a single person write me saying, I want a cow or a horse.
I think there was some hysteria thinking that cows and oxen would be allowed in
With the
neighborhoods like
with the
that.
AUs, we can say no large animals.
Right, and
So it's gonna
I
be
like
small and foul and
Yeah,
it's still-
I
it's
like
still
the
working.
units. So that you can, and I'm understanding enforcement, just for clarification, there's not gonna be a chicken patrol going around and counting chickens. Gary,
Whichever retires is gonna come back and.
Well,
We will get his retirement
when
if
he
we make him
retires,
count
we're gonna-
chickens.
well,
Chickens are,
enforcement is kinda like dogs barking. Well, you don't
yeah,
do something unless there's a major complaint, and then you can count the chickens or pigs.
We're gonna have a standard to go against, so
Yeah,
if there is an
that's-
issue, which we
that's-
don't have right now, so we need to implement some sort of standard so we can enforce properly, so.
And then I'll complicate the whole conversation just a little bit more by saying that from listening to the public comment, people have become so attached to their fowl and their small animals that they have become pets. And we already have ordinances for pets. So that's sort of a different issue. It's like a different conundrum in the whole mix.
So at that point, do they fall under the ordinance for pets
Right.
instead of livestock?
Depending on how the person classifies it.
Well,
So
you
it'd be
could
a
have-
personal decision as to whether
I
it's a
know,
pet or
it's
an
first
animal.
You could have your pet as a bull if you want, but I'm thinking that there's generally a support for, I'll say quiet fowl, chickens and things that don't crow.
Broke
And-
whack or
And,
bees.
and the small animals, I mean, I'm thinking bees, nobody's gonna complain.
He's not an animal.
We need those, and rabbits, and, those things that don't. I can complain about the neighbor's dogs, and they're gonna be more a nuisance than somebody's. I have goats on one side of me and dogs on the other. The dogs are more of a nuisance than the goats are, for sure. But I'm just wondering if you could pass something that would allow the small, quiet animals, if you will, and
Subjective.
reconsider, because I'm not totally comfortable with where we are with the larger animals, especially things like setbacks, and I'm wondering if you get some more, I know you've done some research, but if some more expert opinion on that.
well, there's no, again, it's a policy decision, there's no science out there in terms of whether, there's a quiet goat versus a loud goat versus a dog. It's really comes down to what do you think is appropriate. And when we started this journey, the proposal of the Planning Commission was more restrictive, and then we got a lot of comment back from folks that are very attached to animals. So wait a sec, what about these considerations? And I mean, so it's kind of coming full circle. We've had comments from both sides that have obviously an attachment to animals versus those who don't like animals or don't
Could
want
we pass the small animal and fowl, everything small and chickens portion, and then reconsider if Jeannie and I talked about that, you can articulate that better.
My only concern with that though is like, so can you pull up your examples of the ADU?
They're right there. Oh, yeah.
So like example 2, how many chickens could I have there? You've got the 1 medium or 2 or 1 6. So what's the maximum number of fowl I could have on that lot size?
9 chickens.
And does that follow the
I'm doing
proposal
math
we
right,
have
point-
right now for chickens?
Point,
I guess I'm
point
just
zero
worried about
five,
doing.
0.05 per chicken, right?
I'm just worried about
Yeah.
doing the
So
number
you got
count
42,
now and then
46.
having to reconcile it down the road with an ADU.
Yeah,
You
you,
gotta be one
Does that
or
make
the other.
sense?
You're our numbers guy, Rich, sir. Doing that off the top of my head.
yeah, so
Nine
if you,
chickens.
if you just say, if you use this methodology for just strictly chickens, then yeah, you get 8 to 9 chickens based on the math. So you assign a numerical value on this page. A large is 1.0, a fowl is 0.05, and then when you divide that into 0.46, it gives you basically 8 to 9.
Pretty good.
So we were saying that for a 6,000 square foot lot, that a maximum of 6 chickens would be permitted. And this
It
would,
was 7.
No,
that's
for
6.33.
6,000 square
Over the
foot
6,000
lot
square feet, it was
would not
6.
get 6 chickens on. They
Yeah,
would
so
get
you
5, right?
Yeah, so here's the numbers that you talked about last time. So a 6,000 square foot lot or less goes to 6. 6 to 10,000 is 12. 10 to 12,000 square foot lot size is 15. 12 to 20 is 20 chickens, and then 20 or greater is 25
Right,
chickens.
so
See, I
the
would much
the
rather-
ADU and this are not compatible, as far as just chicken count.
That's
Correct.
pretty close, though.
So if we're gonna do a chicken count one tonight, it would be in conflict if we decided to go to an ADU
Well,
for
no,
larger
but
animals.
he
unless
said
it's,
that, what he said was, if you're only doing chickens, you would follow the chicken ordinance.
But if you want chickens in,
If you want chickens and
Miniature
something
goats.
else,
Chickens
then
are
you follow
nice.
the AEU part of the ordinance.
Okay, so it's a.
It's an either or.
Either or,
But,
okay.
but it also, to Tom's point, it's, if you want to put cows on your property, then it's, you go down that path of large livestock. And so you need to have that conversation about, well, if you don't want large livestock, then just, that's a policy decision. You know, other cities do it differently. So, you know, looking like at Denver, I think I put that in the memo to you, they allow you, I think it's 8 total chickens and up to 2 goats total on any lot in the city. Have a nice day. Others do it based on lot size. You know, you can't have any large animals on anything less than an acre. We're talking about urban agriculture, and that's really what we're getting at, are the smaller animals that are appropriate to be in a backyard. That's really what we're trying to get at. And there are a lot of variations in the city,
So-
obviously.
Perhaps it would be wise for us not to deal with large animals, because the only horse properties that are in Logan at this particular time are the either grandfathered or on, there's a few horse lots. You know, I mean, I don't, but I will say, here, I'll throw something else out. What happens to the guy who wants to do the horse subdivision? He wouldn't be able to do that.
the equestrian property.
We would encourage them to go to Cache County.
The equestrian properties. So, but, you know, I had one lady who called and said she doesn't want the horse that's behind her house to have to go away because she likes it. And so I don't know, but I'm sort of thinking cows and horses are probably
And donkeys.
a grandfathered thing in our community because of the density that we're getting.
And we are gonna get denser.
Right. So, I don't know. I don't know what y'all wanna do.
I wonder if you're all okay with 25 feet from a dwelling for a chicken.
Well, certain animals, if it's a larger animal, it's
Far
50.
enough. Yeah, but it's for the smaller animals.
Do we have
Are you okay with that?
cows in this city
Yes.
We have had cows and we probably do.
as pets?
No, not as bad.
No pets.
So,
Well, I would assume most people, as far as the odor concern, a cow would be of the most significant concern.
and as a noise concern, a goat is the most, perhaps, because they tend to make a lot of noise. I don't know, you know better than I do, Tom.
Well, I don't hear the goats.
Okay.
I hear the dogs. So that's a different thing.
Yeah.
I don't hear the bees and rabbits.
I wish we heard the bees more.
Is there more thought needed on large animals and just?
The AEUs, you know.
I would like to see no cows, period, to be honest with you.
I'd be
I don't know
good
that
with-
cows are.
Could we do
appropriate.
permits for the larger animals, or?
I'd be good with no cows.
I think
I think it's just complicated. And again, as a former farm girl, again, there are places where they're very appropriate. I think the larger animals in the city it doesn't make sense.
I'm the same boat. I grew up with 2 cows and chickens on our property, but we had 2.5 acres, right, on Canyon Road. So, it's a different ballgame now.
So if we were to eliminate cows and horses from the discussion,
Unless they were grandfathered.
Or
Or
llamas.
just large
large livestock,
livestock.
what would be their grandfathering status?
Well, it gets at, there's the two thresholds. So as we talked about this up here for NR4, if they've got an area that's legally established within one of these zones prior to 2013, and they can show that they've had that use there prior to that date, that we can grandfather them. The other area is that we could grandfather it if it dates back to 2000 to this old map. This is the last of up to 2000, and those areas on the west side of town that were R1A, R2A, so it's really on the west side of town. And if they can show that they've had those uses established prior to that date, they've been continuous, then they can be grandfathered. The challenge is you've got such a mixture of stuff in the city that, Kimber can talk about the nonconformity and the legal aspect of that. And I don't know if there's a way to deviate from that or not.
You want me to address that issue?
Yes, please.
So legally existing non-conforming uses are regulated by state statute in Title 10, 9A. And it's pretty simple. It's legally established and continually occupied or used. I can tell you history in Logan, because of illegal subdivisions, rather than try to figure out what laws were in place because they went back so far, we picked a date and time and said, this is the date. If it was before that, we'll recognize it. After that, when we knew that could not have happened, then it would not be considered legally established. So we could do something like that, just pick a date and time if there's ambiguity. The other thing Mike and I talked about, unlike buildings where we can go and find permits to establish legal establishment, I don't know how you show legal establishment of chickens and that type of thing. And so you're really going to have to rely heavily on neighbors. And I think the intent is to give the benefit of the doubt unless there's clear evidence that it was established after the ordinance prohibited it.
Well, I would say I'm just talking about the large livestock, not the chickens.
Yeah, but it's the same principles apply whether it's a cow or a chicken. The only other thing I would mention is if we start calling out cows and horses, if someone brings in a buffalo, I think it'd be better to just
Large
do it by,
animals. Yeah.
weight and pound instead of trying to identify every possible species out there.
I don't know if I'm comfortable with us amending the ordinance tonight. That'd be nice, especially if we kind of figure out what we want, delineate it, and do it instead of just let's just do this part and be okay with it. So I'd kind of like to have it fleshed out.
So what do you
That's
think?
just me. I'm just saying, I don't want to vote on it if we're just gonna amend it multiple times tonight. I'd rather have something we can go, sit down, read it, say, okay, these are the setbacks, this is the number, these are the AUs we're gonna do, instead of us voting on something tonight that we're not quite sure if this is exactly what we want.
Well, and I feel I would agree with that based on just the flurry of public comment that came in after the fact, that people don't, community, I think, didn't have always good information on exactly what the ordinance was going to cover or not cover. And so it would be, I think, helpful to have almost like a white paper that's not ordinance, but this is what's allowed, this is, because people have, some of the phone calls I got was not at all was represented in the ordinance. So I think there's some confusion and community education that might need to happen too, so that as people talk to us about this maybe over the next 2 weeks, that we ourselves can be clear on this is what we're planning on voting on, as opposed to.
In support of that, one of the greatest pleas that I've heard from people is give us more time or take more time. And so I would do that. This is just another thought on that large animal thing. I have neighbors that have large animals, but they pasture them in the county or where they're permitted some other place. So it's not like it's restricting somebody from having an animal. They just have to put it in a place that's more acceptable.
I have 2 horses next door to us, but they also have 8 acres.
Yeah. So is that a motion that you're making?
No.
No.
Jeannie, you're going to say something.
Yeah, I'm just still thinking.
I would move we continue this to our next meeting.
Can I interject to make sure I know what we're doing?
That's what
Well,
I was,
that's what we gotta figure out.
that's what I'm trying to get to.
What I'm hearing from everyone is we'd like to look closer at the AEUs, maybe make sure those are the numbers that we're comfortable with,
Okay.
and maybe take out the the large livestock section.
For those that qualify for the grandfathering.
Correct.
So if somebody has horses in their backyard, they're not gonna have to get rid of the horses.
So can I, okay. My thought is that where I am right now is that I like the AEU concept quite a bit. I think it's very clear and very clarifiable, if that's a word.
That seems fair.
But I would like to not include large livestock. My challenge is that a cow does not start out at 500 pounds, and neither does a horse.
Right.
So we're going to have to define, perhaps we say livestock that can grow to 500 pounds or something like that, so that it's clear that they can't have them as babies and then hope they just get to keep them. And I think that if we could I know that in the past we have done, especially with a lot of our housing ordinances, we've done some illustrations. Mm-hmm. And perhaps it would be appropriate to put that kind of an illustration into the ordinance so that people understand where they can put these. And I think we should also have a chart that talks about, or some other sort of piece of the ordinance that talks about the grandfathering and talks about who is grandfathered and how. And I would like to find some sort of happy medium between 2000 and 2013 and whatever, and just say 2013.
Well, do you want us to come up with a date that seems to make the most sense?
Yes.
So
Please.
January 1 of 2006, or whatever that right number is. But it's going to apply to all species as opposed to just to livestock or miniature livestock.
Okay.
I think that's the equitable way to do it.
And to that point, if we draw a line, it has to be in the favor of including everybody. So there's gonna be some that maybe aren't technically grandfathered, but we're moving the line further down. We can't, if somebody, if we draw it at 213, but the law didn't prohibit it until 2016 in some of the zones, we can't hold them to that 2013. They would be entitled to, illegally established prior to 2016.
Could we make it, is there any way that we can say, as of the time the ordinance is passed?
Yeah, we could, everything that's out there, if you're comfortable with everything out there being grandfathered, we do have at least one that might be a challenge to grandfather.
Right, okay. Well,
Ernesto has moved to continue.
Well, I wanted to make sure we were clear that what we were, are you okay with that? Because I wanted to make sure we were clear, because we can't just continue it without telling Mike we need something else.
So in terms of the AEU approach, the way I've crafted it now, it's you do either this track or that track, which you basically prefer to just say everything's gonna fall under that mathematical approach, whether you're.
That would be my preference, because it's very quantifiable.
Versus having a separate chicken one and
Yeah.
I one or the other.
The numbers are pretty close.
And they're pretty close.
But
Tell
I
us
thought-
again, how big does the lot need to be for the large animals?
No large animals. We're
I
not
thought,
having- we're not
I
having
thought we were
that.
consistent on not having the large animals included in the formula.
Right.
Yeah, but to answer your question, the proposal is 20,000 square feet. That's where you start from,
Half an acre.
half an acre.
Also to your suggestion, Jeannie, I'm not sure we need to put non-conforming language in there. We have a whole chapter already in the land use code that applies the same to all land use. We could designate the date in which we recognize, legally establishment, but I'm not sure it makes sense to duplicate the language we already have.
But I think I would almost like to go back to September when we first discussed it at Planning Commission as that date, because I don't want people rushing out and buying miniature animals and putting them in their backyard.
And so I think designating the date's fine. I just don't think we want to have two sections regulating the same thing.
That's fine, that's fine. I understand that.
So one more question, so the section on the produce stand and is that new or was that already in our existing code? That's 1737.12.
That's proposed language as well. Again, that's part of that clarification of how we define ag. And we do have some CSA gardens in town, so we just want to make sure that they're legitimate.
I don't think we heard any objections to growing tomatoes or anything.
No.
Well, I'm just like, I think this is part of the ordinance that people may not be aware of, because I was focused on the animals the first time I read it through, and so the fact that it's gonna allow, you'd have to have a business license, you'd have to have additional parking area in order to have a seasonal produce stand. So I think that's a section that we should discuss as well. It's a new, otherwise we're gonna get emails in a week saying, my neighbor's had a stand for 20 years and now you're not gonna be able to sell their pumpkins in front of their house. So I think we need just want to raise awareness that that's in this ordinance.
Okay, and in order to be legal and appropriate, I will second Ernesto.
Thank you. So our motion to continue, so that Mike has more time to adjust.
Do you have a date specific?
Ernesto.
So the
I just
next-
said to the next meeting.
16th.
Yeah.
Till the 16th. Any other comments, discussion? Do you need more clarification, Mike, on what we're looking for again? Done.
I'm sure it'll change next time, that's
Planning
okay.
Commission's done a great job. Thank you for your efforts. This is complicated. We want to do it right.
Right.
So,
And there will not be a public hearing.
no.
Okay.
Public hearing. We've had how many emails? A lot.
We had many that were exactly the same.
Yeah. We'll take them. We'll take your comments via email.
I think there was hysteria generated from misunderstanding. And hopefully with the large animals not being considered, it might reduce some of that hysteria.
Okay. Do you have what you need, Mike?
Sure.
Okay. Good. All right. All those in favor of continuing until the 16th of November, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll continue. Thank you, Mike. Rich, you are up next with the resolution 21-53.
You have a red face.
I did it already to him.
Clucking
You're
your
making
mic.
light of a very serious.
Chief Jensen is
I'm
not
trying to
even
interject
cracking a
No
smile.
smile. No
That
smile.
was a good.
There are no smiles coming from you.
Rich, please.
2 items to consider, request to appropriate $72.99 for police overtime reimbursements and a request to appropriate $106,465 for wildland reimbursements for the fire department. That's it.
Any questions for Rich? It's pretty straightforward. All right, this is a public hearing for Resolution 21-53. If you'd like to comment or have questions about this resolution, now is your opportunity. 3 minutes maximum, and please state your name and where you live. And sign in. Don't forget to sign in.
Don't everybody get up at
Yeah,
once.
that's all right. Okay, not seeing any comments, let's bring it back to the council for action.
I'll move acceptance of resolution 2153.
I'll second that.
Resolution 21-53 has been moved and seconded. All those in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. Resolution 21-53 passes. Okay, let's move on to our workshop items. Is Amanda here? Yes, Amanda. Please, will you share information with us about Resolution 21-54, please?
Okay, I'm presenting the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, or CAPER, for the CDBG.
Is your mic on?
Could you speak up to the?
Sorry,
There we go.
better?
Better.
Okay, I'll be presenting the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, or CAPER, for the CDBG 2020 project year. The CAPER reviews the progress of the city's 2020 annual action plan. Logan City received $509,744 in CDBG funds for the 2020 program year. The 2020 program is the second annual action plan, the second year in the annual action plan for the 5-year consolidated plan. The main objectives of the consolidated plan and the annual action plan are to invest 40% in infrastructure projects, 10% in remediation of access and mobility barriers, and 30% in community needs. Infrastructure projects that were completed, there was one, the 1200 North, 200 West intersection alignment. It was 450 feet of new sidewalk, curb and gutter, 4 new ADA ramps. Total project cost was $52,505.20. There were 2 public facility projects, the senior center parking lot and family place shed. The parking lot had a reported 656 benefited residents and a project cost of $26,202.85. And then the family place shed had a reported 387 benefited residents and a project cost of $32,000. There was 3 public service projects. The Cash Humane Society vouchers benefited 36 residents. Project cost was $3,216. CAPSA technology enhancements that benefited 1,215 residents. Project cost was $16,000. And the English Language Center smart boards that benefited 404 residents, and the project cost was $29,500. And then the program administration was $82,560.92. There were 14 COVID response activities that benefited over 169,000 people with a total cost of just under $300,000. And then I listed the 14 activities. I don't know if you want me to read them all. There's just over $210,000 that's still remaining in COVID funds that we're working on coming up with a project for that. So that's it. The end.
The end. Any questions for Amanda?
So when we did the voucher program, they, I'm just curious, so they benefited 36 people, did they only do 36 vouchers?
Yes.
Okay.
They had to close for a couple months, and so they didn't end up doing as many as they wanted to.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
And I know Sunshine Terrace had been awarded something as well, but with COVID and timing of doing things, those funds were not utilized as
Right.
well.
Okay.
So I think that COVID impacted some of the designated projects, but then the extra funds through that helped offset some of that amount, so.
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions for Amanda? Well, the parking lot looked great.
It does.
Did you take that picture?
Their security camera did.
I shared these with my wife, and we're proud of what has happened. I think there's some very good things.
You impacted a lot of our residents, so very, very nice. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you for sharing. All right. Rich, some more budget adjustments. Resolution 21-56.
We have several grants and then 2 items of appropriating reserves, and I'll point those out. First is a $10,000 grant for state. It's the state asset forfeiture grant for police equipment. Request to appropriate $210,000 of emergency medical services reserves. It's our new ambulance fund for the purchase of an ambulance. The reason is, with the long lead times with purchasing ambulances, we usually buy 1 per year, but we're now ordering it in 1 year, receiving it in the next. This will get us back on schedule, so it's request to appropriate $210,000. $1,200 for a library grant from the state for Wi-Fi hotspots, and the last one is $850,000 of environmental reserves for the purchase of a new tree branch grinder, and we'll be grinding for a year.
The chipper that we've had out there, the grinder, is 14 years old. And, you know, as a grinder that old, it starts to have some issues. Again, this was precipitated by this huge storm.
Two huge events in the past year.
Right. So we do have a mountain to deal with, and it was, again, we have some money in the reserve fund in the environmental department to deal with things of this nature. So we just think we'll keep the other chipper going as long as it works, and have both of them to try and get through it more quickly. And then the next challenge will be getting rid of all the chips, because state law says you can only have them on site for a year because they start to cause problems with molding and biohazards and so on. So we may in the spring have a
Chip sales.
free chip day come up. We'll see how that goes. But
How long will it take to get the grinder, since I know there's like a supply chain issue? Is it readily available?
Probably not.
we don't know exactly.
I'm assuming this is a sizable piece of equipment used at the green site. It's not one that we're hauling around.
No, it's one we'll set up and, again, set up at the pile. I mean, it can be moved, but once you stay
Yeah,
there,
but
you
it's
leave it
a-
there for a while.
The one that we have is huge,
Yeah.
if you've seen it.
It will be helpful when our biosolids are coming available as well too, correct? All the chipped material goes into biosolids.
Not all.
I'm assuming the Wi-Fi thing for the library, that can be portable to the new library? Or is that not?
I'm sure it can.
In fact, they're going, yeah.
Yes?
Karen says yes.
You
Thank
check
you.
them out. They're little boxes and you check them out and it's Wi-Fi you take home.
Thank you. They're important.
Wi-Fi you take home.
Oh, really?
Amy?
Yeah, this is what he said, that's what you just said.
Amy?
Yeah, so if someone didn't have internet at their home,
Oh.
They
they
can
could,
check it out and then they'd have Wi-Fi.
to do homework or a project or whatever at home.
It's a great program.
That's neat.
So there's cellular type of hotspots?
Karen, do you want to come up and explain for us, since Rich does not want to?
Yeah, I have cellular hotspot. I use in Denver. A little box.
What is this?
Imagine if that's
Here.
just-
Does Netflix just fine.
Sorry, I should have brought one with me, but they come in a little container and they
they check out, and people take them home if they don't have internet at home, or if they're going somewhere like on a trip, then they can take them with them. We have Chromebooks that you could take with you too. And our Wi-Fi hotspots have actually become so popular. We have 12. We just purchased 10 more because they're always checked out.
That's a great offering from the library. It's an amazing opportunity.
So they get to keep them for 2 weeks?
They keep them for a week. And if they don't return them, we can turn the hotspot off.
Ooh.
Yeah, so they won't have internet forever.
Encouraged to bring it back.
Well, that's awesome.
That's great.
Great opportunity. Thank you for offering that service. Okay, any other questions for Rich? All right. Any other considerations from the council for tonight?
Yes, sir.
Amy, please.
So just since we are in the November month, I just want to make people aware of some Thanksgiving dinner support that is available to people in our community. On Thanksgiving Day itself, the Utah Artisan Market, United Way, Cashel Humanitarian Center, and Just Serve are sponsoring delivery of Thanksgiving meals to people. If you know a neighbor or if you yourself would happy to be a beneficiary of that, the deadline for ordering those is November 12th. And the phone number to call is 702-354-8412. And so those meals will be delivered by community members on Thanksgiving. And then the Loaves and Fishes community meal is doing their annual turkey meal. That will be on Saturday, the 20th. That's an in-person meal with an option to take away, and that will run from 11:30 to 1, and that's held at First Presbyterian Church on Center and 200 West. So those are two Thanksgiving opportunities for people. So if you're in food poverty or whatever, those are great opportunities.
Does Angie's Restaurant still?
I don't know the answer to that. And then I also just wanted to identify that I've been asked to co-chair the Bear River Local Homeless Council along with David Zook, so depending on the results of today, I will be moving into that co-chair position because it's designated by the state. It has to be an elected local official.
And just to add to the community Thanksgiving dinner by the Artisan Mercantile, United Way does have a way for you to sign up to volunteer to help put the orders together and deliver them, and also to donate towards the project.
So is that on their website?
Yes, I have an email, but it's a long link, so it's not easy to share.
Couple up. Say I clubbed and now I got one.
Anything else?
You were clucking a few.
Anything else?
If you honk like a goose, I'm probably gonna go.
If there are no other considerations, we will adjourn for tonight. Thank you all for being here.